everybody. Today we have Shannon joining us on the podcast. Good morning, Shannon. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Thank you. Can you please introduce yourself and tell us what you do on a daily basis for the people who are listening to us?
Sure. Okay, so my name is Sharon Daugherty, and I am a technical writer, content writer, freelance, and also a knowledge management and technical communications consultant. So I help companies to both harness and share their knowledge to improve employee engagement, employee performance, certainly customer and user experience, and really just kind of try to be a champion of the whole user and knowledge management philosophy, to improve the way that companies connect internally and externally.
How did you end up doing that? That was a natural path for you, or that was a? Can you tell us what was the journey to
Oh
to
yeah,
become
it was definitely organic. I started off writing for magazines, just freelance, back when magazines were still all in print. So that'll give you an idea how old I am. But and kind of migrated into writing for corporate America, and just really was troubled by how difficult it was to serve customers due to lack of information. And I became that person who on the team who was always willing to write the process. I was always willing to document the instructions, because I didn't like not knowing what I needed to know. And so I wanted to be able to help my coworkers and customers have a better experience. So I started writing, got into technical writing, and then of course, the more you write, the more you learn, the more you have to curate that information. And so just started learning about how to build knowledge management platforms and what's out there, and just sort of became this champion for that. And I think my first title was the Corporate Librarian or something at this company because we didn't even have a name for it at that time. So it just became that. And then I just out there discovered this term, knowledge management, and it just fascinated me. And so I started to explore it and formalize more of my training, and it just sort of went from there. So I worked in that role and then got into consulting freelance.
So you've been operating in that field for 20 years. Did you see some changes since when you started and now in terms of
Oh,
tools?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I started, every company had their massive book of processes. Everyone had the operations manual that weighed at least 5 pounds, and it was horrible to try to find information and in it. And so then we moved into Excel, and then suddenly SharePoint came aboard, and was trying to learn tools and how intuitive they were. And so definitely over the years, to reach the point now where we're talking about things like ServiceNow and Remedy and Confluence and all those tools, it's been such a journey, and to see things get easier and to see people be able to just interact with these tools that put information right at their fingertips. It has just been a massive leap forward over the years that I've been in it.
So the main changes with those tools is the fact that you can change the content more often, so it's up to date and people can collaborate. That's what you're saying.
That's the main change. That, and for the user, the accessibility, the searchability, and the usability is wonderful now compared to what it was. Those are the main two changes that I would see.
So you used to be the person who answer questions. Now, so your mission mechanically changed from organizing, writing content, and helping them to find the content. Now that they have access to that, what is your role? You were the person organizing, sitting on the tools, or you still answering
Organizing.
questions?
A little bit of both, but mostly organizing. And actually, I think my role primarily over the last, I would say, 5 to 7 years has really been about just helping people understand what knowledge is as an asset, you know, and how sharing knowledge is so critical, and to help people break out of the fear of sharing knowledge. So it's been a lot of almost philosophy, and then, you know, on the practical application, though, it has been about, you know, organizing the information, making sure it's current, you know, that version control, all those pieces are always in place, you know. Yeah.
So when you get new clients, you have to pitch them how important knowledge is, or usually they come to you and they say, "Hey, listen, we have a problem. We know we lack of knowledge. I mean, we are not organized. Could you help?" How is it working for you?
It's typically they come to me with a problem, but they don't recognize knowledge or lack of knowledge management as the reason behind it. Usually the problem is they're either facing an audit, or performance is down, customer experience, you know, reviews have been poor, and they're trying to find the heart of the issue. And usually when we start looking at that chain, looking for that root cause, what comes to light is that we're not taking advantage of the knowledge, the tacit knowledge and the legacy knowledge that your subject matter experts have, and you're letting a lot of people leave the company with really important information. So once we get to the heart of the matter, then we start talking about how do you build that knowledge pipeline, you know. So that's usually how it goes. I'm there to solve a problem.
So over all those years, is there in your particular and personal case any example or story where information was a key success factor, where you really feel that without this information, without this knowledge, you would not have succeeded in this particular situation?
Oh yeah, what jumps to mind is the time I spent with a global information management, ironically enough, information management organization, and their job was to really manage documents for all of the heavily regulated industries, medicine, you know, medical, legal, financial, but in order to do that, it required a real connection between their internal team that was working directly with their clients, and then their frontline workforce that was actually managing the physical documentation. And there were a lot of broken links between these parties. And so you found that the clients were not getting information the way that they needed to, you know, and that not in a timely manner. It wasn't being organized the way that we needed to. And so we had to really look at how to build a knowledge management system that was accessible by every team, and that every team was contributing what other teams needed. You know, it had to be set up in a way that each piece of knowledge fed into the next team's knowledge, you know, so that it could create a flow. And once we were able to do that, the flow was incredible, and the amount of response time for clients was chopped down probably 50-70%. I mean, it was an amazing difference once we got the system in place. And it was about just, it was a tremendous amount of just kind of brain dumps from all of our knowledge management, from all of our subject matter experts, and then organizing that information properly. So, but that was probably the biggest project and the biggest success story.
So you could really feel the impact of what you just did.
You really could. And we felt it at the customer level, which was really incredible. I mean, we started getting almost immediate feedback from customers. I can't believe how much faster things are going. And it was really great. It was really great. And it was really kind of what got me that wanted to experience that more, you know? Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Do you have a story that is the absolute opposite, where you failed, or a company that you helped failed so bad because they have misinformation or absolutely no knowledge about something?
Um, I would probably say that there was a customer service team that I worked with. This was in telecom, and they just their internal system, their intranet, they had no knowledge base at all to pull from. And what I found was that their customer service reps, they would receive a call, get a question or an issue, put the customer on hold, and they were actually going out on the web to sort of research it themselves. And so every single person in there was pulling information from the web to advise this company's customers with, because they had no internal source of knowledge that had to do with the company's own processes and services. So we had to really look at how we could change. And it was a rebuild, from the bottom up. But I saw the thing about that was, it wasn't just a fail in terms of what they were offering the customer. The biggest pain for me was seeing the frustration of the actual customer service reps, not feeling competent or confident when they were doing their jobs, and it affected their performance. Nobody wanted to answer the phone, because every time they answered the phone, they knew that they were going to be put in a position to feel like they didn't know what they were doing. And I just never wanted to see that. And that's always what feeds me when I'm doing this work, is making someone's life a little better when they're doing their job, But that I'll never forget that, because you could feel how despondent they were. Mm-hmm.
So eventually you've been able to help them fix the problem?
Yes, that was really a from the ground up building of a knowledge base, and also teaching, how to use a knowledge base, how to plug in and conduct research internally. The project took almost a year, because we had to source a tool. Then we had to gather all of the knowledge and, build out the taxonomy and determine how best we were going to, filter out the information, make the tool easy. And it had to work quickly, because we were talking about reps who needed to answer questions in real time. So we were able to build a successful system. And then it was about changing the mindset of people, because then that's change too, So there's change management, and knowledge management and change management work hand in hand, I find. So, but it was successful in the end, and people were a lot happier.
Very well. So when you have new clients, when you work on a new project and it's a new industry, it's a new type of client, I guess, or you write content for a different company, I guess you need to be familiar with this new field, a new industry. How do you do this research? How do you deal with, the overflow of information that you have access to? How do you assess if a source is reliable or not? How do you do your homework, basically?
Well, I do my own research in terms of going out on the web and determining, what are these sources of expertise for a particular industry? Who are they regulated by? Where do you, if there's licensing and training and certification, I start trying to become a student of that industry, and learning, sort of getting a foundation. The next part is the relationship building. There's always the stewards of the information, those people who have the longest experience and the deepest knowledge, and building connections with them is very important, because they know what people don't know, so to speak. So I'm taking notes on all of this, and because I have to first build out sort of a framework of all of the areas that I need to hit, if it's security, if it's regulatory, whatever it is, what are the areas that I need to know about this industry? What regulations are they going to have to be in compliance with, and who are their customers, what's important to their customers, and so forth. And once I have those high level bullet points, so to speak, then I know the kinds of questions I ask. And the thing that I think always works best for me is coming in as green as possible and just asking questions like, I don't know anything at all. It's those relationships with the the people who really have the greatest depth of knowledge, and getting that time with them, those raw interviews where we just talk about what the industry is, that starts to just open up. You have to use your own natural curiosity, and it opens up question after question after question, and you sort of peel away layers. Mm-hmm.
So the first step is you do your own research, but then eventually you have to interview people that
I have
actually
to
work on.
interview people. Yes. So I do my own research, and then I interview people. I interview the subject matter experts, but then I also interview my end users, because I need to know what gaps need to be filled, what their pain points are, and figure out. And that's where you discover what the knowledge gaps are. That's where you discover what the build out needs to be, because I need to get this company from the point, from this person who is very uncertain of a lot of things to this person who knows almost everything. I need to bridge the gap between these two levels of knowledge and expertise. And that starts to help me. And then I create a framework, an outline, essentially.
So you do your own research, then you do some interviews. Are you also doing some surveys?
I'm doing surveys among the user groups. Those are the surveys that I conduct, and I conduct them at the very beginning. I do surveys, and then I also observe. If, for example, if it's a customer service group, I will sit and shadow a couple of different people, and I'll shadow someone who's fairly new and someone who is a little more experienced, because I want to see what tools someone is knows that exist, that are reliable, and so forth. So I capture a lot from observation, from surveys, from direct interviews, and all of that helps me to understand where the gaps are, and also where my sources of knowledge are within the organization.
And if we take an average project,
Mm-hmm.
do you end up writing the knowledge, or you always stick to, you organize the knowledge management system, but the end user is actually writing his own answer? How does it
It,
work?
it depends on the size of the organization and how much time they have to work with. Now, for smaller organizations, I tend to do a lot of writing, because I need to be able to be hands-on and work with, if I'm working directly with, the executive level, if I'm working with leadership directly, then they need to see what's going on. But in a larger organization, I need to form a sort of a knowledge management, almost a task force, if you will, and make sure that they understand. We all need to be writing in the same voice. We need to be following a certain set of guidelines in terms of, how this is going to be formatted, and version controlled. But either way, before I leave, before I wrap up a project, I do appoint people who are going to become the owners of that knowledge, because someone has to continue to review it, update it, maintain, the library and so forth. But so it's a mix. But for larger companies, I always have to have people come on board that can write. And that involves a little bit of training, so.
And you maintain this relationship with your client moving on, like, so you run the project, and then you do some maintenance or some follow-up to make sure they actually implement your training and your best practices?
Yes. A vast majority of my clients have been clients of mine for more than 10 years. Um, I work with them in a variety of ways. And I think that what happens is that um, there becomes a relationship. There's a lot of trust involved. And, many of my clients will just come back to me and ask me to review new documentation, as well as conducting audits of what's existing to make sure they've maintained it properly. And sometimes it turns into other projects, other communications efforts and so forth. Like what we're experiencing right now globally, I have a lot of clients who need to do outreach. Their teams are remote now, and so there's new information that has to go out, and so, but the relationships have lasted a long time. I've been very, very fortunate in that way.
Very good for you.
Yeah.
All right. So it was a pleasure to discuss with you. I would like to ask you a last question. Is there any tips or technique that you would recommend, or any book that you would recommend for anyone who wants to to play in this field of knowledge management? What is the one thing that people who want to be very good at knowledge management should do, um, based on your experience?
Based on my experience, I would say the most valuable thing someone would need is the ability to build relationships. You have to be able to tap into sources of knowledge that are living, breathing people. And people are busy and people are stressed. And on top of everything else, people tend to associate their expertise with job security. So,
This is so relevant. Yes, it's
you
the
know,
backup strategy. If I
it's
don't share my knowledge, then they cannot fire me.
they can't fire me, right? They need me here. So that hurdle is always a big one to leap over. And you have to be able to formulate those relationships of trust with people. Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. So you have to extract the information, the knowledge from people's brain, and the only way to do it is trust. So relationship.
Trust, yes. I would say there's three things that I always put into practice. You have to build trust. You have to show respect. When you're working with a subject matter expert, make sure that they understand you're there talking to them because you respect their knowledge and their ability to do what they do. And finally, you have to work with empathy. You have to have empathy for everyone you work with and put yourself in their shoes so that you can communicate that way with them. And it allows people to open up, and that goes further than any tool in the world, in my experience. And you can always come back to those people. That's so important. Relationships are everything. And they've been the cornerstone of my success in my career.
Thanks for sharing that. Sounds like a very valuable piece of wisdom. So thanks for sharing.
My pleasure.
All right. It was a pleasure to meet you and discuss knowledge management with you. We wish you all the best, and please stay safe.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure. I enjoyed it. And you stay safe as well.